I will confess to the audience, Bill is a dear friend who helps me disguise my lack of authority in matters involving history by letting me cheat onto his. Bill, I've been so fascinated. This piece you wrote is a 10-year-old piece written in reaction to a mass murder at that time. Rereading it now, 10 years later, it is so striking. The weirdness of the Second Amendment, beginning with this fact that you point out that it's the only one that has this preface to it. It's the others are all just straight ahead. They're as clear as the Ten Commandments. The Second Amendment gets quite tricky.
Yeah, it is unique, and it's unique throughout the Constitution, too, not just of the amendments. And it's really, while it may not be unique, that strange, awkward, being necessary to phraseology is not unique in all of the founding documents. It is used inappropriately in the Second Amendment from a grammatical point of view, and it's not used anywhere else in the whole documentation of the founding of the country in such an inappropriate and awkward manner, which is just, as you just said, like weird. And it wouldn't matter. Yeah, I wrote that piece 10 years ago. It's quite painful. I mean, I even thought about not reposting it, thinking, what does all this talk do, really? I think we're all in a place like that right now. But it wouldn't matter if it were just some quirk of the founding moment in which a certain amount of disingenuousness in politics found its way into our founding national law. But this is a crisis that we're in regarding gun violence, and this amendment plays directly into it, and fights about it play directly into this crisis. And so it's a very painful thing to look at and try to understand. But every single time some horrific event occurs, like these mass shootings, and this is now going back more than 10 years, of course, there are these arguments about what the Second Amendment means. And we have people on the right and people on, gun rights people and gun control people and people who overlap arguing about what it means. Whereas I think really, if you look at it in historical context and in grammatical context, this is kind of potentially slightly creepy to say, it doesn't really mean a thing.
And you make the point that was Madison's intent. He needed to put something there, basically to hold the country together. There's a group of people who weren't so sure. They wanted this whole thing to be a country. They were interested in maybe it being something more like the European Union, this kind of collection of friendly neighboring states that didn't really function as a country. And he wanted that strong national government. And this was one of those trick pieces that would kind of bolt it together.
Yeah, and I lay it off on Madison, particularly in the essay, and I think I can stand by that to a great degree. But it wasn't, of course, just Madison who was on that side of wanting that strong national government. What the weird phrasing, there are many other versions of that same idea. It goes back to English constitutional law to some degree, the right to bear arms and so forth. But nowhere is it put so strangely. And I think what Madison and others were busy doing is sort of throwing, I guess I'd say, a sop in a way to the anti-federalists, those who had objected to the ratification of the Constitution, and were sort of threatening a potential do-over. And in that sense, it's a sop. There's a vague gesture at the idea of the importance of militias that is contradicted in the main body of the Constitution by the federal power over the militias, which is what the anti-federalists were objecting to. So we end up with this weird two-part thing that doesn't really hang together, despite Justice Scalia's claim that grammatically it hangs together perfectly. And, he wrote the opinion in the Heller case that tells us what it means from the Supreme Court. So I guess we could say we know what it means because we know what the Supreme Court says it means. But that didn't make a lot of sense grammatically or historically.
What is it like for you, having studied the history as closely as you have to read the work of the amateur historians on the Supreme Court like Scalia on something like this?
It's painful, and I think people who are far better versed in the history than I am find it painful. The opinions and also some of the discussion during presentation of argument too that goes on among the justices, and this goes across the spectrum to some degree, the political spectrum. where they just make statements about history that are commonly, just common errors and just kind of general broad sweeping statements, as if they were supposed to be, as if the justices were supposed to be historically astute or grammatically astute. Maybe they're not really supposed to be up on that stuff, but they put themselves in that position, and then it can be quite painful to read the things they say.